Good morning, dear students. This is Vishram Singh Meena, Assistant Professor, English, working at Government PG College, Karoli. The lecture of the day is meant for the students of BA Part 3rd. The poem which were which we were studying yesterday. Now we will continue that poem. The title of the poem is Birches. This is one of the finest poems written by Robert Frost. The poem was published in the year of 1916 in the volume of poems entitled Mountain Interval. Here, the poet, who is a nature poet, being an American citizen, gives an account of his fancy. He is swinging from fact to fancy. He gives an account of the imagery of watches which are being down to the earth. Now he is guessing that who has bent them down. You'd think the inner dome of heaven had fallen. They are dragged to the withered bracken by the Lord, and they seem not to break. The poet is giving here a vivid imagery of the scene of the branches of birches. These branches of birches are covered with ice, and when the sunbeams fall down on them, then the ice is broken into pieces. That scene is being created for the inner dome of heaven has fallen. The poet here imagines that it looks like that the inner dome of heaven, which was built of glass, had fallen. You think the inner dome of heaven had fallen. They are dragged to the withered bracken by the Lord, and now they are bent to the withered bracken. Withered bracken means the bushes which have grown over these branches because the branches have been straying down to the earth for a long time. They are dragged to the withered bracken by the Lord, and they seem not to break, though once they are bowed so low for long, they never right themselves. The poet sees here that birches do not seem to break because they are flexible, and however they have staying down to the earth for a long time, but they have not been broken, and they seem not to break the ones they are bought so low for long. They never right themselves. However, they are not able to take them in the right position in which they were, but they have not been broken so far. They never right themselves. You may see their trunks arching in the woods, years afterwards, trailing their leaves on the ground like girls on hands and knees that throw their hair before them over their heads to dry in the sun. Now the poet is throwing his fancy that The down position of Birches looks like the girls who are dry, drying their hair before them over their heads. So that kind of imagery we can see here in the poem. You may see their trunks. The trunks of branches are arching down in the woods. You may see their trunks arching in the woods. Woods means the forest. You may see their trunks arching in the woods years afterwards because they have been down for a long time, for years. That's why they are trailing their leaves on the ground. Like girls on hands and knees, just like girls who are making their hair dry in the sun. They are bending down on their hands and knees and have thrown their hair before them over their heads. So that kind of vivid imagery we can see in the poem here. But I was going to say that say when truth broke in, but the poet has the different kind of thinking. He says that I was not going to think that these are like girls, but I want to say that truth broke in. When truth means fact, broke in means got in his mind with all a matter of fact about the ISIS stone, because he was a man who was interested in nature like Wordsworth. So he had the fact of ice in his mind. So on basis of his knowledge of ice storm, he wants to say, I should prefer to have some boy bend them as he went out and in to face the clouds. Now the poet transfers his imagination from one to another. I should prefer, he would prefer that some boy who was all alone in the village, and he went out uh, for making his cows graze in the pasture. As he went out and in to face the cows, some boy too far from town to learn baseball. That boy was very far from the town, from the city where mm, baseball playing is taught. That's why that boy was swinging in the trees of birches. Some boy too far from town to learn baseball, whose only play was what he found himself. That swinging of birches was his only play because he was very far, or he was very mm, remote from the town life. So there was only game to play, that was the swinging of watches, football. And the poet imagines that this the down position of these watches are due to the swimming of that boy who had been swinging in watches for a long time because he was all alone and it was his only pleasure. With all a matter of fact about the ice storm, I should prefer to have some boy bend them as he went out and in to fetch the cows. Some boy too far from town to learn baseball, whose only play was what he found himself, summer or winter. He used to play during the summer or winter because he had the only play to play and could play alone because this was the game uh, in which he did not need anyone to play with. That's why he played such a game of swinging of watches, summer or winter, and could play alone. One by one, he subdued his father's trees by riding them down over and over again, one by one. And that was the reason that the boy who subdued means who won over his father's trees who were growing in the forest. He subdued these trees one by one by riding them down the over and over again until he took the stiffness out of them. Until he took the stiffness means hardness out of them for the trees until birches became supple. Supple means flexible. Now they had no hardness, no stiffness in them. Till that time, he played the game of swinging, and that was the reason of the down position of these birches in the forest. This was the second imagination or fancy we can call of the poet until he took the stiffness out of them, and not one but hung limp, not one was left for him to conquer. Now all trees were supported, were bent down, so there were none to conquer now for him. Conquer means wind, or we can win. We can say win, and not one what hung limb, not one was left for him to conquer. He learned all there was to learn about not launching out too soon and so not carrying the tree away clear to the ground. Now the boy had learnt not launching out too soon and so not carrying the tree away clear to the ground. He always kept his poise to the top branches, climbing carefully with the same pains you use to fill a cup up to the brim. The boy was very careful in climbing on trees. He always kept his poise means balance to the top branches, climbing carefully with the same pace, just like we have to fill a cup up to the brim. So we are very careful uh, about the brimming water of the cup. So was careful the boy with the same pains you use to fill a cup up to the brim and even above the brim. Then he flung outward, feet first, with a squeeze, kicking his way down through the air to the ground. So was I once myself a swinger of watches. And now the poet wants to say that he was also a swinger of watches. So we can imagine here that the poet is mingling his own experience of a swinger in the past. So the poem gives an example of personalism here because generally the poets write in subjective style. He learnt all there was to learn about not launching out too soon and so not carrying the tree away quickly to the ground. He always kept his poise to the top branches, climbing carefully with the same pains you use to fill up to fill a cup up to the brim and even above the brim. Then he flung outward, feet first, with a swish, kicking his way down through the air to the ground. That was the activity by the boy. Sometimes he was on the top of the tree, and sometimes he uh, was on earth. That was the swinging activity by the boy. So was I was myself a swinger of watches. The poet also a swinger of watches in his past. That's why he is mingling his own experience in the image of the boy who has made these watches tree down to for a long time. That's all for today. Thank you. Have a nice day.